Hi there, and welcome to another episode of Therapy by the Book. My name is William Haddad,
I'm Daniel Villanueva.
and this is the show where we take your favorite fictional characters and ask the question, what would it be like if they came to therapy? It is Star Wars month again, and today we are going to be working with the most notorious, famous, and best bounty hunter in the galaxy, Boba Fett. Oh my goodness.
What a life! What an incredible way to come into existence, and to really see yourself all over the place. And you guys will understand what we mean, and most of you that are listening to this already do.
He's a character who's gained so much unexpected popularity when he was first introduced into the series. And since then, I have to say, just has constantly reinvented himself somehow in the eyes of the fans as well as in the eyes of the lore. He's managed to just go on this extraordinary journey of identity, of adventure, of good and bad, evil and compassion throughout the entire Star Wars saga, the OG trilogy, the prequel trilogy, and beyond. And all while not actually being a member of the main character cast.
Right, and he plays this. He has lived, because remember he's a real person with us. He has lived this weird in between. He's always in the gray meaning that he's not as loud as Vader regarding his own pain and everything that he's gone through. He's not as impulsive or emotional like Anakin, but he's more quiet. He's contained, and the only way to define him is kind of a survivalist. He will survive. He does survive, no matter what. He does it himself, anyways. He does it his way, like good old Frank has to say.
Exactly. His whole identity, really, in many respects, from the get-go, because of how he was raised and how, as you said, he came into existence, was based around individuality.
Yes.
From day one, there was never a very strong sense of community, and even family itself was a single digit for Boba when he was born.
But that's the whole thing. I wonder, and this is part of what I wanted to talk to you about, and for everybody to listen to, is this idea that did he choose to be alone though? Because technically, there was a lot of people around him. I mean, he was a genetic clone, but he was the only son of Jango Fett. The only, I guess, the what is it, the true blood or the only pure heir is, like, I think how they referenced him.
Yeah, he was an unaltered clone. So he was the only clone that didn't have any tampering with the mental faculties or the growth acceleration, because they wanted soldiers quickly with the clone army. He was just he no change. He was perfectly preserved.
Well, but that's what got me thinking. Now we'll get into the the psychological dimensions of it and all that. But for me, it was this idea that number one, he was taught to be that way, disconnected, isolated. That he had he was who he was, and these were not technically anybody to him. But at the same time, it could have been a choice, right? It could have, on top of the teachings, maybe he found it just easier to make them othered or make himself othered, really, because then he wouldn't have any real attachments, which he's been taught not to have attachments, and he would have no true connections to these. I can't even fathom the number of lookalikes, really, that are out there in front of him, because I struggle to say chooses, because I think it was taught to him and forced upon him. But let's run with the word just as a placeholder. He chose to go at it alone and try to figure it out, which is, again, his own yearning for survival and to be defined in a way that put him on the level of somebody he looked up to so much, which was his father.
It's a real chicken and egg question, I think, honestly, because
Okay.
you can point to multiple examples of both. You can point to nature dictating that uh, a life of primarily solitude and isolation was the way to go. It was what he was given. It was what he was presented with the majority of the time, and it was to an extent because not consciously enforced by his. Well, it's funny. It was both consciously and subconsciously enforced by his upbringing with Django. It was subconsciously enforced because he would have been watching his father, who always worked alone, rarely took group contract jobs as a bounty hunter, didn't, wasn't married, didn't have other kids, didn't have family or relatives that he spent time with, maintained, a very sparse apartment where he grew up on Camino. And the only reason he was living there in the first place was because it was part of his job to be the template for the clone army that the Kaminoans were breeding. So that's all implicitly demonstrating to Boba the necessity of a life of isolation. But then you also have Django, I think, consciously um, reinforcing that as well. With how he taught Boba, with the combat styles, with the philosophies of bounty hunting, with the codes and the morals, as well as aspects of trust. How to trust an employer to do right by what they're promising to pay you. How to learn who's safe to work with and who you want to steer clear of, and a lot of just the general bounty hunting 101 tips. That Boba was privy to from a very young age. So you've got both of those acting to influence little Boba's outlook on the world. But then there are also instances where Boba makes a very conscious choice to embrace that philosophy as well, even when presented with alternative paths. And we're gonna be doing this just like in Darth Vader. We're gonna be jumping around constantly between the different time spots and films of his life. There's a scene in I forget which episode, but one of the episodes of Clone Wars where Boba infiltrates a group of young clone cadets who at this point look about the same age as he is. So he's able to blend right in and masquerade as a young recruit in the clone army, also that he can get closer to the Jedi, because Mace Windu, one of the Jedi, is the one who's responsible for, spoiler alert, killing his father, which Boba witnesses. And we'll get into that. We'll get into that more soon.
Of course.
But in this instance, which is a little sometime after that horrible tragedy, so Boba infiltrates the clone cadets and he gets very close. He actually manages to plant a bomb in one of the compartments aboard the ship where the Jedi are traveling, but it ends up killing the wrong person. And later things kind of get out of control, and eventually Boba and the other cadets, I think, crash land on a distant planet somewhere, and Boba has to make a choice whether to stick with the recruits and work together to find their way back to the Republic, or strike out on his own. A risky gamble. He doesn't know where he is. He's going to be all by himself. He's still just a kid. And Boba does feel, for a moment in that, a genuine, I think, a whisper of wanting to belong with a group of younger kids, to be part of the community. But he still chooses in that moment not to go with them and to keep with the solitude. So, do you want to argue at that point the subconscious, the implicit had crystallized into what he decided he was going to do, or was he always going to be somebody who embraced that choice? I mean, those are what if scenarios, but to me it says that he was that both were there. It's kind of hard, I think, to parse the two out to the point that you could have a definitive answer as to which was the greater.
Yeah, no, I don't think you can. I do know, just based on patterns and it's what I've seen anyway, is that when we think of like a pack mentality, especially even within generational stuff, when you have a father that has a certain perspective and excuse me, has lived a certain life, has taught from birth, the ways, right? How um, string the needle. I don't even know what the right term is, but ride both fences. Whoever the highest bidder is, I don't care who it is. You kind of go that way. You tend to internalize a lot of the information. You tend to create your own understanding of the world through what the pack is showing you. And his pack, whether it be bounty hunters, gang members, military, when the pack is doing a certain going a certain way, most people will tend to go in that direction. Do we deviate? Yes, and that's the beautifulness of consciousness and being present. But he didn't have that. He doesn't have that until later. We finally see it once we see his the book of Boba Fett, which is
Yes.
where I got a lot of my information from. And you see how he finally comes into his own, and he starts realizing that he has been keeping everybody at arm's distance for a reason. Again, because it protects him, keeps him safe, and physically safe, yes, but emotionally safe. He doesn't have to get attached to anybody. He doesn't have to have any emotional attachment, any feelings of regret, anything that will get in the way of him doing his job, which is the main course of his life. That is the only directive, is to do his job. And that's what he's been taught. Unlike his, I'm just going to call him his, million siblings. Is there anywhere where we can find? Is there an actual number? I tried to find that and I couldn't find it.
Of how many clones were
Yeah.
created? Oh, I don't think there. Yeah, there were millions. I mean, there were
just incredible. Yeah,
so many.
A sea of military. Anyways, but he carved his own direction and went with it. So yeah, no, I do feel that his father's influence was a key factor, and I'm going to argue that his death and the influence of other people that maybe were helping his dad at the time, or whatever it might have been, were influencing him as well. Whether they were good people, bad people, or in between. The bottom line was who was there who honored their word with my dad, who was a good person, quote unquote, not really, but at the moment, and who did something. Then again, it's the for any of you Walking Dead fans, it's the Negan effect. Negan was a monster to everybody else except for his people. And I know we can argue that to some of his people he was a creep too, but he also made sure that he would go out of his way to go to extremes in order to get people's attention, so people would listen. And you could see that with the same scenario or same idea that him and his dad and all the way down the line, they did what they needed to do, and you can either look at him as a bad guy or a good guy, just depending on your point of view and where you're standing, really. Yes, there was just so much data, there was so much influence on this that it really caught me by surprise how much. And of course the book of Boba Fett was written in a great way. Oh, I'm sorry, his stories of his life and trials and tribulations was told to me in such an incredible way that I saw the little boy, I saw the hurt little boy hiding behind a mask, that really has been yearning for connection and community his whole life since birth, and that's insane to me. That's where it took me. That's where this exploration with our friend Boba went.
You can't overestimate the impact that his father had on shaping Boba's philosophy on life and on connection. I think in many respects it was because for the better part of his life until the Tusken Raiders and his time with a real tribe for the first time came into his life. Jango Fett was Boba's tribe, and that was enough for him.
It was his whole world.
Exactly. So much of Boba's so much of his early career, his early adult life, was modeled almost beat for beat on what he knew about his father's career. He even continued to use the same phrase that his father always used whenever people would ask him, "What do you do?" His father would say, "I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the galaxy." Boba kept that mantra and added the little the little suffix, like my father before me. But he would, Jango says it to Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones, and Boba says it to Din Djarin in season 2 of The Mandalorian. So it all comes full circle. And that's actually, it's funny, that's actually after Boba spent time with the Tusken Raiders. So that should give you a sense of just even then how enmeshed that mindset had become in terms of his outlook. Even after he finds his tribe and realizes what, on some level is starting to make that change, he's not quick to relinquish it.
No, I mean, but why would he? Because this is somebody he respected and looked up to so proudly, and he lost him at such a pretty young age, man.
He was 8. He was 8 years old.
Right. So his mindset. Remember, working with kids, at that age, it's very black or white thought patterns. His dad was a hero to him, regardless. There was no thought that he was a monster, that he was this bad guy, that he was this ruthless bounty hunter that was, what's it, feared across the outer rim. There was just dad. There was a mentor. And this need for connection within your family. I'm riffing because Boba didn't give me too much detail on that. But from what he did tell me, Dad wasn't the cuddle on the couch and let's watch a movie kind of guy. So there was no there was a yearning for love and affection and anything and everything that comes from our natural state of being as a child that was never fulfilled. So any scrap of approval was consumed, man. It was like a drug, and at 8 years old to lose your dad, and lose him in such a brutal way. I guess we can go there now. Having him decapitated.
Yeah, and he saw it all. He watched the whole thing.
Right. So now the impression is you just took away this grandiose, incredible man for no reason. We being able, and this is what I was talking about earlier, being able to put ourselves in different perspectives and see things through different lenses. We know that he wasn't the greatest guy, and it wasn't for no reason. So there is this counterbalance that goes into our client, where his perspective is all love, all admiration, all protector, mentor, family, the only family. So he has him on a pedestal, and that's where I left him. He deserved to have that memory of him. He deserved to have that connection, that vantage point. And so I didn't challenge that because it's not my place to challenge. I can use my empathy to put myself in his shoes, and understand that, yeah, he was all these things from his perspective, and that's okay. It's not about me. It's about him. So yeah, that like sudden violent loss, the abandonment trauma, the rage, the distrust in the Jedi, the Republic, any institution really. That's what fueled and fed his need to now become, and I'm just going to call it a robot, because it's he's not truly a robot, but it geared him to shut off anything that might put him in danger and to be hyper aware always of any possibility of being double crossed, hurt, any loss really. Yeah, but it all started there. I would argue it started way before then, but that's definitely a key point that he brought up in our conversation.
My reaction was that it reinforced and practically really gave permission for him to take everything that he'd already learned and been influenced by with his father to new extremes as he
Yes.
came into his own as an adult and assumed the mantle of bounty hunter as his father did. Because yeah, no question, the trauma of witnessing that brutal murder, it would have changed his. Well, it wouldn't have changed, but it would have amplified the distrust, the wariness, the need to always be only about the individual, to look after himself before anyone else, because his dad was the one exception that proved the rule prior to then, and now his dad's gone. So there really is nothing in the way at this point left to protect him. So it was, it would have been out of necessity, but he also would have seen it as doing right by what his father had taught him at the same time.
Yes. That's the subtlety, man. I'm glad you said that, because that's the subtlety. That's the subtlety that you would miss if you were looking at it um, not from a bird's eye view, because everything has different perspectives, right? Different angles to look at it. But that's the subtlety. He's still living up to his. He's still looking for the validation from dad, man. He's still looking for that way to fit in, to be um, his son's father, or his son's father, his father's son. Trust is dangerous, and relationships are all transactional, and it's crazy. Well, that's not crazy, but it's interesting to me that those are clients that we see every day, and so when we look at this, the correlation, we see that the pattern is childhood trauma, very disconnect from dad, equals trust is a no-no, trust is dangerous, and relationships have to be transactional. I'll give you this and you give me that. I'll give you good bounty hunting. Let's just say you'll give me appreciation and money and fear, really. And fear in this world and in many worlds with people that we've worked with, fear feels like stability, because now people leave you alone, and ultimately that's what they want, is just to be left alone, because then the likelihood of something negative happening goes down, and it's statistics, man. It's a numbers game, and it's just fascinating to see how it all plays out, and how we see again. And I see this, and we've talked about it before when I worked in CAPIT, CAPIT, Child Abuse Prevention, Intervention, and Treatment. These perpetrators that maybe people would struggle to work with, I would see a grown woman or a grown man. But the reality was, after I'd start talking to them, there were little boys, little girls. They were children that were hurt, and trying to make sense of the world around them, and that's what he's doing as well.
Yeah, I've seen it even in non-perpetrator clients. You can
Yeah.
witness that same kind of void where the relationship with dad was going on because it was all transactional, or because dad's approval was based on material accomplishments as opposed to unconditional love. And I want to go back to something you were talking about earlier, which was, as you said, I love that you described it as like almost a drug, an addiction, that Bobus was looking for that acknowledgement and appreciation from his dad. And what's interesting is because it wasn't that Django dismissed him, quite the contrary. Boba was actually given, in many respects, a window into Django's life that no one else had. Django, kept him around for important work meetings, trusting his son's discretion. He, taught him how to pilot his starship. He could already work the guns by the time he was 8 years old, as we see in Attack of the Clones. Boba had a lot of backstage access and was showing himself to be competent already. But it was all it was all in, all part of the plan, all part of it was all preliminary lessons to ready him for the professional life. And if he had not performed to those expectations, I think there's little doubt Django would have made his disappointment very clear.
Oh no, I was just going to ask you what because I thought the same thing. I was thinking that what if he would have turned out, and let's play with this idea. What if he would in this? Okay, this is my own weird brain, right? Because I look at things in strange angles. But what if he would have turned 5 and decided he wanted to be a theater kid? And he, and he didn't want to do anything. He didn't want to have anything to do with bounty hunting. No way.
I don't want to bounty hunt. I just want to go play in the cantina on Mos Eisley.
I want to act. I want to be on stage. I wonder if to what extreme Django would have been or would have gone. Do you think he would have? Wow, that sounds like a dog. That's horrible. I was going to say put him down. Do you think he would have killed his son?
That's a great question, and yeah, it's a dark question. Hard to say. I mean, I feel like Django would have probably at the least gone through a bit of an identity crisis because Boba's a clone of him. So if suddenly he's wondering, like, if Boba's like this, does this mean I'm like this? What does this say about me? if my clone, who is a perfect genetic duplicate of myself, is rebelling against the very thing that I now embody. I mean, I don't know. It's a coin flip at best as to how Django would react. He would have a rough day wrapping his head around it.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I thought about that. I thought about, man, what if he said, "No, Dad, I want to be a carpenter," or "No, Dad, I want to," I wonder, but I think he had no choice. It's like, gang members that I've worked with, where their whole family was involved, or lawyers or doctors that I've worked with, where their dad was a lawyer or doctor, and they do not like what they do. They don't want to do it. They would rather be doing something else. But they're so far in that they've chosen to suffer. And for us, our work is to try to figure out how we can change that. How we can give this new meaning, so that it doesn't feel like suffering every day. But yeah, I don't know. It's just my brain went there when I was watching that.
So I just got a crazy deep dive idea as we're talking about this. So tell me what you think about this. I don't know if this is the Disney canon, but I know that in the original backstory for Django, he became a bounty hunter and acquired his armor because he was raised by the Mandalorians, who were a group of, they were a notorious, very strong, very proud, very powerful group of vigilante mercenary warriors who, practically rivaled the Jedi at one point in terms of how strong they were. Django was not born to the Mandalorians. He was actually he was actually a child. I can't remember what was going on, if this was where he was born or if his family was just visiting, but his parents and everyone he was with were brutally shot down and slaughtered in front of his eyes by a rogue faction of the Mandalorians, a splinter group who turned nasty, even more nasty, and were just kind of going on a killing spree. And and Django was even younger than Boba was when we meet him in Clone Wars. I think he was 6, maybe 5. He was just a kid. So I'm not an expert on epigenetics, but I wonder if on some level, because Django was forced into that life of survival, of bounty hunting, of the Mandalorians are my tribe now, my family, with all the extremes that existence can muster for that kind of need to survive, need to embrace. I wonder if on some level, even if there was a part of him and thus a part of Boba that wanted to be that theater kid growing up, if that the genetic trauma of that horrible childhood experience that made Django who he was carried over when Boba was cloned, and thus would have had an influence, I don't want to say predetermined, but had an impact on why Boba too willingly embraced the hand he was dealt by Jango growing up in that life. What do you think?
I think you're right. I think because there's a lot of research to the idea that trauma is passed down not only through stories, right, and through actions and behaviors and everything else, but genetically as well, or on a cellular level. And it's interesting to think that even if he wanted to be, I don't know, a metal worker that created the Death Star at some point, this was also a calling for him. That was maybe fun, or something that he feels like, oh, that would be a fun hobby to work with metal. But his calling or his need was bounty hunting, was being in the midst of everything, because it served a purpose historically, and in the present, with again getting the validation from his dad and the world around him, because like we were talking about earlier with dad and really with him, that the idea of fear throughout the Outer Rim, right? This notoriety. He was famous without needing to be famous. So it's also a counter drug, right? So not a counter drug. It's also another layer of motivation that we can look at, or at least that I looked at. Yeah, it's he's such a in-depth character with just a lot of transactional relationships, abandonment, trauma, isolative, disconnect, just everything and anything, because of everybody and anything that's been in his life has been that.
I like how you pointed out earlier how fear became his MO for how people were to perceive him as soon as he assumed his professional role as a bounty hunter following Jango. Because there's that wonderful tongue-in-cheek line Vader has when he's recruiting Boba, among other bounty hunters, to try to track down Han Solo and Princess Leia in Empire Strikes Back, to figure out where they've flown and are hiding with the Millennium Falcon. And Vader makes a point. He actually like looks at and points to Boba specifically when he says, "I want them alive. No disintegrations."
Right.
And that's a reference to how at that point in his career, Fett had become notorious for utterly disintegrating those targets that he'd been tracked down to kill rather than capture. His whole career had acquired that reputation, that if you hire Boba Fett to kill someone, he won't just kill them, he will obliterate them.
Yes. And that's the Negan effect that I was talking about earlier too. It's
right.
the same idea. And there, I wrote down some quotes because I like to write down some of their quotes. As a clone, who am I if I'm just one of many? Am I real? Am I unique? I don't remember where I saw it. I don't remember or actually where it hurt. Well, no, maybe I read it somewhere. But it stood out to me because I was thinking about this idea that he's still striving to be, the best. But why are we trying to be the best? There's no. Well, I guess there is a ranking system for bounty hunters, right? If you're notorious, they're going to hire you more often.
There is, yeah. Status brings prestige, gives you more leverage to negotiate higher fees.
Yeah.
And I mean, you can afford to walk away from some jobs that seem a little shady, which actually becomes relevant later on when Boba has his epiphany with the Tusken Raiders. But
right,
we'll get to that.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that's how he builds this identity. It's almost like mythic identity, as the greatest bounty hunter who's ever lived in the world,
in the galaxy.
and the galaxy. I mean, you even said it when we first started.
Yeah,
He's influenced you. He
exactly.
got you. You're on board.
I'm on board. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid with him. He's just that. It's that persuasive a moniker. But a big part of that is the fear that goes along with that moniker, because everybody responds to fear.
That's it, and it's what I would call another mask, man. I talk about masks often, and the idea is that you put on a mask for work, you put on a mask as the dad, as a son, as the guy at the Jamba Juice, as you create these identities that you feel are going to be more palatable. Or as a necessity, but you lose track of yourself, your true authentic self. And our job or our work is to get people to start peeling these layers back and find themselves and feel comfortable with their flaws, with their where they flourish, where they bloom, and connect all of it. Because you are incredible the way you are, and there is this insecurity with him, of this fear of not existing as his true self, right? And his true self is this bounty hunter. But I would argue, and I didn't with him, because again, it wasn't my place to change him. It was my place to get him to create an understanding, and eventually, once we understand, then we consume or adopt who we are. That maybe that was a mask as well, which I think, I would argue that it was, and that him himself, yes, he was strong, yes, he was brave, yes, he was, all these things, and I would even argue righteous then, and we see that in the book of Boba Fett, where he's actually there is right or wrong for him, and it doesn't bleed into later, because he's been taught that there is no right or wrong. There's only money. So yeah, no, it's such a fascinating thing to look at him through identity, because his identity has been fabricated for him and by him since birth.
Yeah,
that's the most amazing thing, which I guess I would even argue that's for most of us. But his was to an extreme.
Talking about his sense of right and wrong, his own morality, it's interesting because he did have, I think, a code, at least outside of combat. And he wasn't he wasn't incapable, I think, of feeling respect, even for his adversaries. Something that stood out to me when I was listening to him talk about his backstory and everything that he's been through, is that he actually referred to Han as Captain Solo. He referred to him with his military title, even though Han was his quarry. Han was, in Boba's eyes, a smuggler, already a criminal who was wanted by Jabba the Hutt and the Empire, and Boba was hired by both to bring Solo in. But that didn't stop, I think, Boba from having, at least an acknowledging sense of respect that Solo was a capable individual as well. He could respect Solo as Captain Solo as an adversary and as a military man who followed that same aspect of discipline, of I don't want to say chain of command, because that's not quite it, but of just a sense of
which is
what's the
mutual
phrase?
Respect.
Yeah, mutual respect, honor among thieves. That's what I was thinking of. Honor among thieves. In that sense, the two of them weren't that different. And ironically, Vader also referred to him as Captain Solo.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Which is
So I didn't even catch that.
I know, right?
Yeah,
but Vader,
funny.
Yeah, that's a similar pathos at play, because of course Vader, was once a military man too, a Jedi general in the Clone Wars. So both of them could, I think, share that underlying respect and sense of honor that was due. But that, to me, said that Boba, he wasn't a sociopath. He wasn't just a cold-blooded, heartless machine, even though he worked very hard to present the appearance
He
of one.
wanted to be, though. He needed to be. That's the only way he was going to stay safe. And that's what I picked up. That was the idea that I got. because you could see it in how his life mirrors how our lives here in the real in this universe, right, in this world. Colonialism, exploitation, uh, forced identity roles, like we were just talking about. His insistence for self definition, right? Especially within this galaxy that's going to dehumanize him, because everybody was dehumanized. Everything was a product. Everything was a product. Everything was of service for whoever the ruling class
Right.
was.
Transactional, like you said.
Everything's transactional.
Everything's transactional.
Yeah. Interesting.
So I want to talk about where the turning point comes now for Boba, because all of that, like you were just saying, all of that dehumanization, all of that materialism, all of that transactional back and forth of people as property, of quarries as objects, as this is what I do to earn a living, and even I, am out of necessity, though I rationalize it as, I'm good at this and I embrace it. All of that comes to a head when Boba is eaten by the Sarlacc.
Okay. Okay.
This was my takeaway anyway.
Yeah.
Because here's the thing to consider. Boba took kind of an unusual step, even I think in his eyes, or at least certainly in the eyes of people around him, by sticking around Jabba's palace after he delivered Han Solo to him. Usually Boba's, here's the bounty, collect my money, I'm out of here. Nice working with you. In this case, Boba stuck around for quite a while, several weeks at least, after he delivered Han. And there was
tracked the same thing.
Yeah,
but for a different reason.
Okay.
A different reason. I thought it was a little bit. I thought it was for a different reason. Go.
Okay, so I'm curious to hear your reason, because I'm still drawing a puzzle, and that was a lot of people speculated as to why that is. Some people thought it was to admire. Some people thought it was to admire his frozen trophy, which Jabba, hung in the wall. And maybe there is something to that. Maybe that was, like we were talking about earlier, that mutual respect, despite Fett coming out ahead, Han had earned the bounty hunter's respect enough that he wanted to stick around and, admire and think on that some more. But also, it's true that Jabba actually took kind of an interest in Boba after that as well, to the point that Jabba actually started talking with Boba kind of one-on-one, having him up for drinks.
Like a right-hand man.
Yeah, as a right-hand, and he became kind of a right-hand man to Jabba's court, as he'd been briefly to Vader, almost doing a lot of the jobs for him. At that point, he felt he was probably the closest thing Jabba had ever had to a friend. Which, if you know Jabba, actually wasn't true. Jabba has one friend. His name is Effentmon, and that's a whole other story. That's Jabba's only true real friend. But the fact that Fett was looking at it that way, honestly, I think says more about him than about Jabba. Because
I totally agree.
From Jabba's perspective, as he told someone else, Boba Fett was a quote-unquote pup. That was who he was in his eyes.
Interesting. Yeah, and that makes sense with my theory, man. Because I feel, and if we're talking about when this all started, I think it truly was the match hit the gas, to ignite the fire when his dad was killed. I think that's when it truly, the switch switched, and when he decided I really need to protect myself, and the only way to protect myself is through power. That way he won't ever have to fear about being abandoned again, because although his father didn't, when we talk about abandonment, listeners, it's not this idea that his dad, said good luck. Of course that happens, but when we lose someone that way, we feel a source of abandonment. We feel a sense of abandonment, that because it's so quick, it's so shocking, and him going all these years capturing, killing, surviving, he found that he can be detached, like we talked about, and feel safe. And then he went to this place where he had this gentleman that played a good role of needing him, but really was gathering information, and like he said, called him a pup. Because I feel that, and I love that you said that, and that he said that, because that goes with this, or correlates with this idea that Boba Fett wanted that connection. This was family again. Although it was dysfunctional and it was a mess, but he could, at the very least, somewhat be himself. He still wasn't himself 100%, but enough so, more than he has been in who knows how long. He was able to connect with this version of himself where he had connections, where he had somebody to talk to hang out with, something that he hasn't had in a long time. So I think really that was family, man. I think that was his dysfunctional version of family.
Yeah, I agree.
And yeah, and it gave him a sense of connection and a weird sense of power that he hasn't felt in a long time. Although it was obviously false, and Jabba would have backstabbed him, as soon as he had a chance or a reason.
In a sense, that's kind of what happened when he got eaten by the Sarlacc. It wasn't Jabba who, I mean, Jabba didn't order him thrown in the Sarlacc pit or anything, but I think what happened was two things. One, he was able to witness the power of a true tribe, a true family in action. Because when Luke and Lando and Leia, the tribe of rebels, the tribe of friends who trust each other so much that they were willing to risk their lives to infiltrate Jabba the Hutt's palace and entourage to free Han from carbonite and then break out, not only rescue Han and break out, but actually kill Jabba in the process. Something that, dozens upon dozens of professional assassination attempts had never managed to do before. And it's this small band of ragtag rebels and friends, and they're able to pull it off because of how much they love and trust each other. That's the power of a real tribe working together. And Boba witnesses that, and not only does he fail to make a difference, but in fact he ends up, thanks to Han, getting eaten by the Sarlacc. And obviously, no one looks for him. No one tries to help him in the fighting or come to his rescue or back him up. He's presumed dead, and very nearly is. So he's confronted with the reality of what an actual tribe in action can be like, what they can be capable of, and the fact that this dysfunctional pseudo family that he was starting to feel maybe a genuine longing or sense of connection to was never real to begin with when he's eaten by the Sarlacc. Both those truths are hammered home full measure, I think, at that point for him.
I think it's perspective, right? We can look at it from so many different angles and come to the same conclusion, that there was something there. There was something deeper, something that he wasn't even aware of, which is it's beautiful, because then we start to see the bleed in of who he really wants to be, that the person he might have been, the carpenter, the theater kid. We don't know. What about the Mandalorian armor, man? I kind of looked at it, and I'm a weirdo. I look at things as through metaphors as well. Do you think that was almost like another identity?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was, right. It wasn't just like for his protection. It shielded the child within him. It shielded him, to so that he could be this robot. And that's why I keep saying robot, is because it almost felt like he wanted to not feel again. He wanted to not have pain, and instead he chose suffering, which is such a common pattern. What do you think?
I agree. I would argue too that it wearing the armor validated, in his eyes, that he was doing right by his father, and that his father's lessons, his father's way, was the right way. And Star Wars nerds, please correct me if I'm wrong, but although it's, I think, perfectly possible that Jango told Boba at some point before he died that the plan was for him to inherit the armor, he's never able to formally bequeath it to Boba before he's killed. Jango, there's never a formal passing of the torch of that armor. And Boba later claims that it was a gift from his father, and gets very, very prickly very quickly. Say that 5 times fast every time somebody suggests that he doesn't deserve the armor, isn't a real it isn't even a real human being, just a carbon copy of Jango, much less of deserving of the title of a Mandalorian armor. Though it's also true that Boba never claims to be affiliated with the Mandalorians, but that's a nerve for him. That's one of the few things that can get under his skin without much trouble.
Yeah, which shows that the emotions are there, that it's all there, that he's not a robot, that he's not a machine, that he's capable of all these things, which I'm going to argue, I'm glad he didn't have at the time, and it wouldn't have served him. It would have caused him more harm. He wouldn't have made it.
I was just going to say, I think he would have been killed if those had come into the picture sooner.
And that's the whole process of therapy and coming into our own, is this idea that I call it, I'm mumbling a lot. I would argue that it's not something I made up. But it's something that I use a lot, is the shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? It's this argument that I should have done that, I could have done that, I would have done that. But I call BS. I think we go through our phases in this life, whatever happens, however horrible, there's something we can learn from it. Do we, can we sit and wish, I don't want to go into horribleness, this horrible thing didn't happen? Sure, absolutely. But it did. And if we would have been this person that we are now, back then, we wouldn't have made it. And if we weren't, or if we were a different person, or a different variation, or if we would have been the carpenter instead of the bounty hunter, he would have died. He wouldn't have survived. And so we see how the what would you call that, trauma adaptation comes through his reputation, his fear, the fear he causes to everybody else, his survival techniques, but it was costly on his emotional development, and now he's with us though, and now he's starting to see these things, and he's in a better place. He can actually live. We don't want him to lose that edge. I don't want to take that away from him. That's a superpower. What I want him to do is try to really open up and be vulnerable to himself, which will give him the strength to be himself, closed off, careful, smart, deductive, I think is the right word. Almost like a Sherlock Holmesy type of vibe.
Yeah, he's got that skill from having to track so many quarries over the years.
Absolutely, and to see people's energy, and not physically. Well, I guess in that universe maybe you could, but it was more this idea that to know this guy's not right. He's going to shoot me. He's going to react. He's going to do X, Y, and Z just based on a subtlety. I don't want him to lose that, but what I do want him to do is feel comfortable in his own skin, and that's going to take some work. So, what are you thinking? What about his desire for legacy, for community, like we've been talking about? Because that's glaring to me.
That's at the forefront. I mean that's where everything changes after he manages to escape the Sarlacc and he's picked up by the Tusken Raiders. He has that experience of living among a tribe, though even then he still has to kind of earn their respect to become one of them first. But he does that. He puts his combat skills and his survival skills, everything that he's ever learned, he's able to use, and manages to eventually become an honorary member of that clan. And
mutual loyalty, man.
Yeah, and it's so funny you said carpenter, because he actually gets to do that too when he builds his own custom gaffy stick as
right.
The ceremonial part of becoming a full-fledged member of the clan. So he even gets to try that
That's
hat
hilarious.
on too, right?
See, he wanted to be a carpenter his whole life. He went the wrong way.
Exactly. Just
You,
always in him.
do you think through that he found a little bit of dignity? Because do you think that there was part of him that finally saw that there's another road? Because I think that is now the second shift. I would say first shift for me is dead. Right, that was boom. I am this mercenary now, and I have to be. I can't trust anybody but myself, and I can't get attached. And then now he creates this mutual loyalty and finds this feeling, this burning feeling inside of dignity that he doesn't truly understand, but he builds on it because he's smart. He's also really smart, and so he understands how to grow from it, and we would call it post traumatic growth, right? There's this idea that you see the arc, right? The arc of understanding that this isn't a hill that's going to bury me. It's actually a hill to stand on, and that's where we see he went from trying to survive, survival, being alone, to connections and really leadership, which he was built for to begin with.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% on this, man. Yeah,
okay.
all the way, because he, as you say, he found that dignity. He learned after witnessing it with the rebels. He learned what it feels like to be a part of that cohesion and that community, and to learn that actually that comes with, shocker, its own set of safety and security. He learned that there was more than one way to make your way in the galaxy, to be a simple man and make your way in the galaxy. That going at it alone and creating a persona through fear wasn't the only strategy that could be successful. And what really stuck out to me was after he leaves the Tusken Raider tribe, and joins up with blanking on her name, but the assassin, who's
I don't remember her name either. But
yeah,
I know
you know
exactly
what I'm talking about. Yeah, but anyway, he says to her that what he has in mind, what he feels he wants now for himself, is something akin to a crime family. He wants to build his own tribe, but one that is based on different philosophies. Because he's realized now that although he was really good at surviving, really good at watching out for danger and using fear to protect himself, there was a lot of risk that was involved. Nevertheless, he was taking a lot of chances, and it was in many respects because he was so good at it, better than most of his fellow bounty hunters, that he stayed alive as long as he did. Yet even that wasn't enough to protect him when when the thoughtlessness, when the lack of loyalty that was never there to begin with, in the case of Jabba, almost got him killed via the Sarlacc. And he's as he says, he's just had enough of employers, of stupid or selfish or double-crossing employers sending people like us on these suicide missions to almost certain death, constantly doing things to get us killed without any kind of loyalty, any kind of appreciation or respect that is more than just material or transactional.
I totally agree, and you see that evolution. Yeah, he does value determination above all, no matter what, and you've seen that from the beginning to the end. He's still emotionally restrained, more so at the beginning than towards the end. Although his emotions are stunted, they do exist. He at one point was the lone wolf, doesn't want to rely on anybody else, and then he evolves again, seeing that there is another way, and that you can, although conditional, rely on other people. There is loyalty, among thieves, like you said earlier, but he really values honor and trust among people he chooses to trust. And I would even argue that now with forming the I don't know the Doom Squad, forming this thing, it's almost like he's desiring legacy now, something that he's going to leave behind, something that's going to exist just like his name, but that will continue to flourish even after he's gone. That he's going to be part of forever, almost like his own children, uh, and or I don't know, siblings or something again connected to family, something again connected to him, wanting this intrinsic connection, or yeah, I guess that's the right phrase, with others, and we see it play over and over and over and over. It's subtle, but I think it's a lot more in your face once he gets to that point.
Well, he starts to verbalize it. That's the key thing,
Yeah,
is that it's not just by that time, it's no longer a concept. He's actually talking about it. He's discussing it with, with his partner and with his, potential, new children to bring into the fold. And I agree with you about it being a legacy too. I think he does want that, because he chooses to take over Jabba's palace as his base of operations, which that you can't get much more symbolic than that. That I'm going to turn this other former crime organization into another crime organization, but one that is mine, that stands for something more than just transactional, petty relations. I want to be the. It kind of reminds me a little of The Godfather, honestly. I want to be the Don who isn't just gonna whack you because you messed up a job. Like you come into our family, you are family, and we look out for each other. We're gonna be bound by ties of loyalty rather than credits.
and he does something that goes against his father's words and his own nature. He messes with his own money, because once you do that, he's basically turning his back on all the Hutts.
That's true.
And that's a lot of jobs he's messing up, and that again, it goes totally against his perspective on this world that he lives in. He's planting roots. He's creating this pseudo family, and saying that we're not going to bow to anybody, that we're going to be respectful, we're going to take care of our own, but we will not be controlled or dominated by anybody again.
Yes,
So yeah, man,
exactly.
that's a different layer.
Very. So, what are we thinking for diagnosis?
Do you
want to say it, or shall I say it?
I don't want to say it out loud. It's complex PTSD. It is. It just is. We can talk about identity disturbances, attachment disorder. I think it's too deep for attachment disorder. Avoidant attachments. Moral injury. I don't know.
Maybe some grief, left over from his
father. Definitely some grief. But come on, he's textbook complex PTSD.
He is.
Yeah.
Although I will say this, I think I would label it as mild to moderate rather than severe.
Because he's very high functioning.
Because he's very high functioning, and because he's already started to do, albeit maybe subconsciously, but consciously you could argue, some of the self-work by starting to embrace that new mentality of the we rather than the I, post Sarlacc.
What do you think, and this is based on my own experience here, what do you think is going to happen to him a year, 2 years down the line? Because I having worked with people that have gone through some incredible traumas, unfortunately not that dissimilar from him. When they become reacquainted with their emotions, it's a roller coaster because they don't know how to control them. You got to remember, listener, that you have been, riding the dragon your whole life. You've been learning how to regulate or not, or your thought process is that you're not regulating it, but I would argue that you are, to a certain extent. He has not. he has completely shunned that part of himself. And so I'm wondering what is it going to be like? Because yes, he is letting a little steam out of the motor. I don't even know, whatever the heck has steam buildup in it. And that once we open that plug and it really starts coming out, I'm curious to see where he's going to be. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt, and I'll let you answer after. But I think he's built up enough resilience to be able to manage, and we're going to be there to help him hold it. I think for me, it's going to try to make sense of everything and give it the meaning that it needs without any judgment. I don't want him to judge himself for blocking it out or whatever it might have been. I think it was a necessity. It was a means to an end. There was a reason. There was a method to his madness, and it worked out. But what do you think? What do you think? A year, 2 years down the line, once he's really opened up and opened a lot of those locked doors that he has in his mind.
Yeah, that's a great question. It's a great question. I think to some extent it'll depend on how quickly his new organization, his new family grows, and how busy it keeps him. I think that if it's relatively consistent, relatively stable, at this undertaking, I think that he'll have an easier time settling in and riding out the waves of emotion on that internal roller coaster as it comes. But on the other hand, it's Tatooine, it's the Outer Rim, galaxy's a dangerous place. Something else could happen. Don't know what, but it's also possible that that this new truth could be tested. And if it is tested, it's I think it's I believe that he's capable because he's overcome so much already that I think he would be able to overcome any obstacles or disruptions that were thrown, in his path, trying to realize this new sense of himself. But it might be tough because the types of obstacles, protecting. It's one thing to say I want to have this family that is bound by loyalty that I look out for as they look out for me, but it's another thing to reinforce that and maintain that as that new approach begins to be tested by obstacles. So I think the real challenge would be if and when those barriers to what he's trying to be now start to appear. And we see an example of that actually at the end of the book of Boba Fett, when he's confronted by his former originally mentor turned rival bounty hunter turned bitter enemy now, Cad Bane, who really, he gets under Boba's skin in a way that few other people in the galaxy can at that point with what he says to him,
Right.
And even though Boba defeats him in the end, you could argue that he's still probably haunted by Bane's words that Boba's, you're always going to be a killer. You're always going to be capable of that cold-blooded, pure isolationist persona that you wore as well as I have.
That to me is a fighting point and something that we could use, or I would use to well, let's say we would use in our benefit, because my argument would be, so what? Literally, so what? Because I want you to have that. Because there are going to be raids. There are going to be people coming for you. There are going to be people that remember who the bounty hunter was. And you've set up roots now. So you will have to use those skills. You will have to be that person. I don't want him to lose that. I want him to hold on to that. We're dealing with a different set of circumstances. If he's going, if he got, he, I don't know, became a Canadian citizen, and is now living in Ottawa or something, yeah, sure. Let's be super nice and connected, and let's figure out how we can minimize that version of himself to come out. But he is not. So again, I would argue, so what? Be that guy. Have that guy in there. Don't lose him. Don't lose that edge. But there's so much more that we can open up and let go. And what I'm trying to do is think of it, listeners, think of it as you trying to hold back all this water, but you're standing on a platform. And you're struggling. Your shoulders are tired. Your arms are tired. You're exhausted because you're trying to hold back this water. What you don't realize is that once you just let it go, the water will flow. You're on the platform, man. You'll be just fine. It's okay. You're okay. And that's what I want for him, is to be able to open up, let go, not lose himself because he needs that guy, but to open up so that we can live with some of the pain that he's going to go through, but stop suffering.
I like that metaphor.
Just stop suffering.
Yeah. His partner, the sniper assassin, has a great line that I would reinforce, I think, in session, which is, she says, when he's questioning, like, is this really, I've done this now, but am I really cut out for this? And she says, if not us, then who's going to be the one to do it? I'm like, there you go.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's precisely because of what you've been through, because both sides, the life,
yes.
that you're uniquely qualified. You're just,
absolutely.
This is exactly where you're meant to be, man.
Absolutely. Yes. That's the best part. That's the best perspective, is this idea that everything that we have lived through is going to benefit us in the long run. It's just about making the shift to create the right meaning. Okay, what about treatment? What are you thinking?
Yeah, so some interesting thoughts on this. As much as we've talked about identity and the whole, duality and parallels with his father, I wouldn't start with that, because I think that it would be a little hard to do that when he's still dealing with, just a lot of more immediate PTSD from his ordeal in the Sarlacc, as well as continuing to settle into and make peace with this new way of life that he's committed to. So I would probably begin just with basic trauma work, psychoeducation. I would ask him to tell me about the nightmares that he's getting, because he's always having to spend a lot of time in the Bacta tank to heal his body from the acid and the digestive tract from the Sarlacc. So break down the nightmares, do some body work. He learned, I think, some basic kind of almost Tai Chi, like, physical self-care from his time with the Tusken Raiders. So doing some of that, looking for ways to fine tune his own physical, self-care routine into therapy, perhaps even. And then from there, I'm gonna steal a quote from you, man, on this one from our Darth Vader episode. Once we have enough rapport and we turn to the identity portion, I'd speak to the man under the armor.
Yes, I love it.
I would ask, who is Boba Fett? What does that name mean to you? So much is the same, but is there anything that you feel makes you different from your father? I'd ask him to tell me about not just the things that he admires and connects with his father. I'd also ask him to tell me if there's anything that he ever disagreed with about, his father, or that he would have done differently if it had been him in his father's shoes, at the time. Just things like that. Ask him to paint a more full picture, and look for ways to tie that into, the lessons that he learned from his father. Can we give those new meaning? Can we give those new purpose now with this family that you're building and these roots that you're putting down now that you're kind of becoming a father figure, in a sense of your own? And from there, just kind of go into looking at ways to talk about community, to ask him, how does he define community? Does he have a mission statement for his organization? What are the unspoken rules and morals that he wants to live by, that he wants his family to live by? And then this is, I'm summarizing, because this is all obviously going to be spread out over quite a few sessions, because it's a lot.
It's a long road.
Yeah, but we're talking. I mean, I'm looking at this as, like we were saying earlier, 1 to 2 years of mostly consistent sessions, I think, to cover this. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. And the first part, I call it my build-up phase, because he's coming in very disconnected from his emotions, very almost kind of raw, almost like maybe if any of you have ever gotten like a paper cut or cut, and it gets a little bit infected and it's a little raw. It's not devastating. It's not, but if you bump it on something, it hurts. That's how he's feeling with his emotions right now because they're all new to him. So he's trying to figure this all out. So I would start, exactly what you said. I would start building him up. I would start trying to find all the incredibleness of him, all the things that he's not seeing, and I would talk about all the things that we talked about, where I don't want him to feel bad for who he was or really who he is. I want him to own it. I want him to sit in a place of acceptance and this knowledge that his dad did the best that he could. And he's going to do the best that he can, and his dad's dad, who knows, did the best that he could, and on and on and on. We're doing better each generation, ideally, and build from there. And then I would definitely go into some trauma work, reconstructing his personal story, because I think he has a jaded personal story that's very wow, that's a weird metaphor. Hidden behind a mask, and not just a Mandalorian mask, but really and literally behind a Mandalorian mask, but really behind this need to distance himself from anything that'll make him vulnerable. And if I can help him reconstruct it, he'll see that vulnerability has always been there, just in a different light. And what he'll begin to feel is this comfort and this pleasure that he's been doing it the whole time. He just didn't know it. So I'm kind of Mr. Miyagi in him. I'm teaching them how to block a punch, by painting the fence.
I like that.
And then I would start working about, trying to reclaim his humanity, right? Especially all the what was it called? Geonosis.
Yeah, geonosis.
Mm-hmm. Didn't weaken him. It taught him a lot. He was advanced for his age, and he lost his father, and that's all part of it. I don't know if I would go dive deep into it. Depends on how comfortable we are with each other. I might, because I'm also like that. I like to push to that extreme because it gets people rattled. They take off their need to please me or be nice to me or be judged by me, and they get mad. They get frustrated with me, and that's what I want. I want you to tell me to go screw myself. I want you to get angry because I know it's not anger towards me. I don't take it personal. I know that you're releasing. I know that these are emotions that are coming up, and I'm willing to be the one that sits here and helps you express it. And then we're going to explore it and play with it. Play with it that it's not personal, that you're letting go of this, and it's beautiful, actually. There's a lot of pent up anger, sadness that we're going to let go. Body work as well, maybe trying to reconnect himself of what has been trying to be armored against, and try to blend the two. A lot of identity work, defining himself, his perceptions, his chosen values, leadership, honor, loyalty. I don't know. We talked about a bunch of them, how they're all incredible, and that it's such a great legacy that his father gave him. Because I'm still going to compliment and really build up his dad, although Dad wasn't the greatest guy, but to him, to this 8-year-old, he was.
Yeah, he was his whole world.
He was a god. Yeah. And so I'm gonna keep working on that, and I'm gonna try to reinforce that. We're gonna talk about I'm gonna validate his origins, his clone, his individuality. The combination of he's not lesser than, because he shares some DNA with other people. So do everybody else. Who has siblings and a mother and a father. So what the heck's the difference? I'm gonna change the meaning of that. Try to help him with relationships, make it more reciprocal than transactional, which is going to again go back, to stage 1.5, I guess, to open up his vulnerability, his extended community, leadership on Tatooine, interdependence, is really not weakness. Again, vulnerability, man. It's not a weakness. It's actually a superpower. So I'm going to normalize that. Existential work, his legacy. What do you want to leave behind? Who are you? And what kind of ruler, what kind of man do you want to be remembered as? I'm not sure if that'll go anywhere. I think he's going to think of it as, well, I'm just being me, and I'm going to do whatever I think is right, which is fine.
I'm not sure
for me.
I'm not sure he really has an answer to that yet.
Right, that's the whole point.
But that's the whole point, is asking.
I don't need him to.
Yeah, just putting it on his radar.
I am just planting seeds that will grow, because I already know consciously. I'm aware he already is. Like I just did. I know what he's going to say. So what I'm doing is planting seeds for him to kind of water, and what'll happen is in time he'll come back to me with it, as if it was his own idea, which is fine. I don't care. It's not about me, man. It's about him. I am gonna do his mission for fulfillment, how it's gonna align with his relationships of honor, respect, and everything else, to try to find out what that even looks like, because I don't think he has a clue. I'm going to be very empathetic, somewhat sympathetic, very respectful, extremely, and this is the kicker, man, extremely honest. And just like we talked about with Don Corleone, I'm going to be as honest as possible, and I'm going to be blunt, because I think he needs that. I think he respects that. He doesn't want fluff. He doesn't want me patting him on the back and telling him he's such a good boy and he's so incredible. He doesn't need that or want that. He's not going to come back. But I'm going to be blunt with him. I'm going to be respectful, but I'm not going to pity him. And I'm going to be steady in what we're talking about, where we're going. It's not going to be CBT organized, but it is going to be steady. The framework is going to be there. This idea that you might be feeling this way because you're frazzled, so we're going to get you here, and here we'll let you be able to see past the horizon, to see everything that's gone and everything that's coming, and that's what he's going to want to need.
I like that.
Yeah, dignified therapy space, connections. I'm going to treat him like this is a good one, actually. It just came to me. I'm going to treat him as oh dang it, I lost it. As a warrior seeking transformation. That's how I'm going to treat him.
I like that. That's,
you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
So we're gonna literally meet him where he's at, and I don't want to change him. I don't want him to be the incredibly nice guy from Canada, all accepting, loving guy. I don't want him to be that guy. No disrespect, Canada. Love you guys. I want to actually come up and visit pretty soon. But for him, I want him to be. I want him to continue to be himself. But from a different, open. I want him to put down the bags, man, because he's carrying a lot of weight. Long-term vision. The healing isn't about shedding his armor. It's not about restarting.
No, well, and he, to your point, he keeps his armor. He spends a lot of time regaining. Yeah, I mean, I would want to too. The armor it's not about shedding it. It's about redefining what it symbolizes
and knowing when to wear it, man.
Yeah.
What about ideally, like, secure identity? I want him to be secure in who he is. Trust and legacy, and then reclaim that little boy inside himself, man. We tend to, and we will all have the little boy, girl, or the them that's inside of us, that tends to want to drive the car when things get overwhelming, and when we reconnect with a traumatic moment in our lives, and what our goal or hope is that the man will have something, and I'm using ourselves here, to believe in, and we'll put the little boy in the passenger seat. I want him to be able to differentiate and create this legacy for himself that's based on who he already is. That's what I'm looking for long term.
Yeah, all the pieces are there, all the tools, for this to be possible are there. And I really like what you said, a warrior going through a transformation, because that's exactly what that is. It's there's no regrets. He doesn't have any regrets about what he's done, and that doesn't need to change. It shouldn't change for him to
No.
for him to take this next step. It's all going to be about just realizing those links, connecting those pieces together, and then seeing the really beautiful and new picture that they paint, and embracing that. That's where we'll find that happy outcome for all.
Yeah, it's like living in LA, right? After it rains, you're like, oh my god, have those mountains been there the whole time?
All right,
it's beautiful.
Were they always so green?
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yeah, oh man, and then the smog comes back, and we're back in our weird.
Time to put on the helmet.
Cave. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Activate that breath filter.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel, it's been wonderful as always, and
amazing, man.
This was a great client to work with. So many wonderful, extraordinary layers and stories and adventures that he's been on, and we're not going anywhere. There's still more of Star Wars Month yet to come, so stay tuned. And thanks everybody for listening.
Thanks a lot. Take care.